Hello, everyone, and welcome back to American Ultras Talk. Club football is back, and with that comes our weekly USMNT Stock Watch series, where we look back at the past week of football and pick the biggest positives and negatives from the weekend, as well as highlighting some players to keep an eye out for this coming week. Now, unfortunately, I am by myself for today's video, and with that, I decided to obviously go with a different format. If you guys watched the last Stock Watch, which coincidentally I was also by myself for, I just decided to tweak the format a little bit to viewer feedback, and so it wasn't so long of a video. So today I'm going to first be giving you 3 players whose stock went up this past week, 3 players whose stock went down this past week, and then going into the players to watch for this coming week, 1 main player to watch, 1 sleeper pick, and then an Academy Player of the Week as well, which was a popular addition to last week's Stock Watch, or I guess 2 weeks ago because of the international break that a lot of you guys liked. So that one's going to be sticking around for now. So without further ado, let's just get into it with the first Stock Watch. And I mean, you see the 2 jerseys behind me. It has to be Captain America, Christian Pulisic. What a game he had, and a much needed win for AC Milan. I think the way they started the season definitely wasn't ideal. I think I actually mentioned in the last Stock Watch that Pulisic has basically been their only good player. Well, they're finally backfiring. 4-0 win over Venezia, and Pulisic playing a key part, getting an assist with another very well-placed corner. And that's the second one of the season for Pulisic. Both assists are off corners, which kind of begs the question, where have these been for the USMNT? Because his set pieces have been a key part that I think we've really pinpointed as something that the USMNT can work on and improve. Maybe pick someone else to take the set pieces, but he's working on them for Milan. So maybe the question should go to, why are players not attacking the set pieces as much as the AC Milan players are? But regardless, he also got a goal from a penalty, looked very bright in the game, could have had a brace and a penalty. They had another one minutes later, but he was nice enough to give it to Tammy Abraham. You could see a nice little moment between them after that goal. So I think Pulisic is really just firing. I mean, he could be here every week. It's a very distinct possibility that he's here more weeks than not, but another great week for him. And now going into their first Champions League game, he's in great form, scored with USMNT as well against New Zealand off the bench. So I think he's fit and firing. Going into Champions League against Liverpool, it's a huge matchup at home to start the new campaign for them in Europe, and I think he's going to be a crucial figure for them there. I mean, as he has been all season, probably their best player to start the year. But on a more negative note, the first stock down of the season of the week has to be Ethan Horvath. Now, the goalkeeper has just had a nightmare season. I mean, we went over his horrendous mistake a few weeks back. I think that was 3 weeks ago, and 2 stock watches ago. But Horvath gets a stock down now for club and country. For starters, during the international break, Patrick Schulte and Matt Turner were both preferred to Ethan Horvath, so it's a sign that he's maybe falling down the pecking order a little bit. Diego Cochin was also brought into the camp. Those were the 2 keepers that didn't play. I don't know if Cochin's ahead of Horvath now in the pecking order. We're just going to have to wait and see until October to see what Pochettino does, but I think it's very fair to say that Horvath at least has fallen to number 3, and it's a distinct possibility as well that Pochettino decides to not even call him up in October. So definitely a stock down from a national team aspect and from a club team aspect. Now, I think I will preface this with, it could just be because he was on international duty and got back a little bit late. This seemed to be the case for a lot of players this week, but Ethan Horvath was on the bench for Cardiff City this past weekend. I think that is notable because as a goalkeeper, especially one that didn't play at all during the national team break, yes, he was away with USMNT, of course, but the fact that he didn't play at all, he was sat. Cardiff have started the season horrendously. Their manager's in danger of being sacked. They're winless in 5 games, 4 of those being losses, negative 10 goal difference, 11 conceded, 10 of those being from Horvath. It's just been a disaster, really, at Cardiff, and I don't know if Horvath being benched is going to be a thing that's going to maintain. I mean, I don't think their backup keeper really did well, so Horvath will probably come back in next week, but I think it is notable that he wasn't starting this week. We're just going to have to see what happens as the season progresses, but it's looking like, unfortunately, for Ethan Horvath, his time with the national team and maybe even with Cardiff City even, his days could be numbered. But on a more positive note, back to the stock ups for number 2, and actually back to the AC Milan versus Venezia game, because despite the 4-0 loss, I'm actually going to give Gianluca Busio a stock up. I think he was one of, if not maybe the only player on Venezia who actually looked competent. I think he had some really nice spells, dribbling in particular. I think his passing was also pretty nice. Progressing the play, but I think in particular dribbling, he ran circles around Yusuf Fofana, the big money signing, who I think has been with France's youth teams in the past. The fact that he outshone him in his first game back from injury, yes, having the international break to fully recover definitely helped, but the fact that he immediately jumped into the starting lineup, played a crucial role, I think you can argue that he was probably Venezia's best player in that game, although, again, that's not saying much considering the 4-0 loss. But I think it was overall a very encouraging sign for Busio. He's going to be a hugely key player for Venezia if they have any chance of staying up this season. I think they're probably going to go back down, but Busio is probably going to be one of the only standouts, one of the only bright spots this year. Hopefully he can perform well enough to get a move, because I don't really want to see him in Serie B again. And if he moves to a better Serie A club next summer, who knows? Maybe he's back in USMNT conversations. We know our midfield's deep, but we've seen players like Aiden Morris get a chance in the last camp, and he impressed. Luca De La Torre got more chances than in the past in this past camp, and he impressed. Maybe it's time for someone like Busio to also step in, get that chance. We just don't know who Pochettino is going to prefer, and if Busio stays in good form in Serie A, maybe he gets called up. But now on to the second stock down. It's actually going to be a player I just mentioned, a player who plays the same position as Gianluca Busio, another player in a top 5 league, though maybe not for long. It's going to be Luca De La Torre. I think he gets definitely a stock up if we were to grade his national team performance, because I thought he was very good in actually both games. He came in off the bench, of course, scoring the goal against Canada, and I think he looked very good as well in the second half. He played the full 45 in the second half against New Zealand. I think he was good in both. However, from a club perspective, again, like I said, there was a bunch of players that would usually start that didn't start for their clubs because they just came back from the national break. Now, for Luca De La Torre, he continued to not make the bench. And in the past, it's been said that he was injured, and he did just fully recover from an injury right before actually the international break. But I mean, we know he's fit. He just scored for the national team. He played a lot of minutes, a lot of significant minutes over the break. We know he's fit. We know he was back in Spain in time, and he still wasn't included in the matchday squad. I think it's really concerning. He was on the transfer list, but unfortunately no deal got done in the window. This kind of just stinks of going to San Diego FC, going back to his hometown in the January window. I just don't think he's going to really play for Celta Vigo in the first half of the season, which basically makes it a wasted first half of the season. And if he's not careful, it could be a wasted full season. And with only 2 full seasons now before the World Cup, and he's one of the ones on the fringes, like I said, he did help his performance, of course, with the appearances that he had with the USMNT over the break. But, there's also the fact that he's not playing with his club, and if he continues to not play with his club, it's not looking good, and especially when we have players like Busio, of course, that are coming in, playing well in a top 5 league. There's a lot of competition in the midfield, like I said. So I think De La Torre could be one of the ones on the chopping block, unfortunately. He needs to just sort out his situation. Hopefully he gets back into the good books at Celta Vigo. We're just going to have to keep an eye on him. But now moving back to the more positive side of things, into my final stock up, and I'm going to kind of cheat on this one. I'm going to pick 3 different players, but in one category, and it's going to be dual nationals who've been with their other nations. Because we had, of course, Luca Kolyosho. I'll start with him. Scored a fantastic solo goal against Leeds. I was obviously watching that game mainly for Brendan Aronson. He was okay, not worthy of really a stock up or a stock down. But Kolyosho, despite being a little quiet, actually, outside of the goal, he didn't really do much. It was a fantastic solo goal. A great turn on, I think it was Manor Solomon, I think it was. I know it was at least his mistake that led to the goal, but a great turn in his own half, just dribbled it the full length of the pitch and calmly slid it past the keeper. Very well done by Kolyosho. It just shows the different aspect that he can bring to the national team. I think he would honestly already be a starter for us over Tim Weah if he were to commit. Unfortunately, it looks like he's going to stick with Italy's youth teams and not getting any minutes for them for now. Then there's another one, Henry Chase, who's been with Japan's youth national teams. He was with the U23s. Actually, when we played them, not the one right before the Olympics that was televised. We lost 2-0. The one that was last fall, we played them in a U23 camp. I think it was actually our first U23 camp. He was with Japan's team for that one, and he's with Stuttgart's academy recently, but he just got promoted to the first team, and he's actually been starting for Stuttgart. Just started again this past weekend against Joe Scally and Mönchengladbach, and again, he looked really good in a 3-1 win. I've been very impressed by him, only 20 years old as a center back. I will say the likelihood of us actually convincing him to change to the USMNT is very low because, and this is the case for a lot of Asian nations, for Japan, you have to give up your other citizenship when you play for Japan. So, if he was going to play with the USA, he'd have to give up his Japanese citizenship and vice versa. I think it makes more sense. He's more connected with Japan. He's probably going to keep his Japanese citizenship. It doesn't really make sense for him to give that up to play for the US, but we can hope, and we can at least, it's not over till it's over, right? You never know. Pochettino, I think he absolutely has to be talking to these players, doing everything he can to convince them to switch, because Enrique Chase, Luka Kolyosho, both of them are going to be so crucial for our future if they do decide to play for the USA. For now, all we can do is monitor them, see their good performances, and continue to spam USA flags in their comments of their Instagram posts. But last one, actually, I wanted to include in this list because he's a player who was actually with the USA Olympic team in the camp before the Olympics, didn't make the final roster, but he was actually with Germany's U20s over this past international break. It's going to be Damian Downs, and he also gets a stock up because he scored as well this weekend. I think it was his actually first goal of the season. I'm pretty sure he got an assist the last game, which he was actually got a stock up for as well, but he's been playing really well, finally adding the goal contributions to his already very good play, creating and getting chances for himself as well. I think he's going to be one to monitor because, yes, he's in the second division in Germany, but Cologne are a very big club and they have a very good team. They're going to push for promotion this season. He's been a starter every game for them. He's going to continue to play a crucial role, probably get a lot more goals, a lot more assists. And look, he's still such a young player. I don't think he has the potential to play for the German national team, which is actually good because it increases our chances. We know he has the interest. It's just all about recruiting. Maybe we give him a call up if he continues to play well. Who knows? There's been a little bit of a striker competition that's heated up over the last year, but maybe Damian Downs works his way into the consideration. But now, unfortunately, for the final stock down before we get into the players to watch for this coming week, and it's going to be a rather unfortunate one because he actually got us stuck up, I think, the last stock watch that we had. It's going to be Caleb Wiley, and this is going to be another one like Ethan Horvath where it's a stock down for club and country. And since we just had the international break, I'll start with the country aspect of things. He didn't really play much for the USMNT. Christopher Lund was preferred to him, and I thought Lund was one of our only solid players against Canada. I thought he was all right again against New Zealand. Wiley came in late in the game, and in his only 20 minutes or so, the only impact he had was making a huge mistake that led to New Zealand's goal. So I think that's a big stock down for him. He had the chance with the national team, and instead of capitalizing on it like we hoped he would, some would say he has the potential to, and maybe he still does. He's still so young, only 19, but I would say that this past camp was probably a step back for him in terms of him on the pecking order for the USMNT. Who knows what's going to happen for the left backs in the next camp? Jedi Robinson will probably be back, which means Wiley might drop out. It'll probably be Jedi and Loons. Maybe John Tolkien gets given a chance. Again, we're just going to have to wait and see what Pochettino does, but I think Wiley probably hurt his stock with that camp. And I'll also say another thing, he, as well as Luca De La Torre, was not in the matchday squad for his club this past weekend. Now, it was cited because he was in the international break. He just didn't have enough time to get back in training and all of that. It's not injury related. It's not anything due to his place in the squad. That's secure. But the player who has been starting over him, who started over him the week before the international break and this past week, Sebastian Nanasi, the Swedish man, scored another goal. He scored a goal the last week as well, or the last game 2 weeks ago, and he scored another one. I don't think Wiley's going to be starting for any time in the near future. And again, Strasbourg formation, it kind of suits him because he can play more as a winger, as a left wing back, but it also doesn't because he's too high up. I've touched on this in the past. He's too high up to make much of an impact defensively. And I just don't think he has the skill set to be able to beat players one-on-one, to be too effective as a winger at the top level, which Liga is the top 5 league. So we're just going to have to see what happens with Wiley, but I think he's probably going to be a backup for the foreseeable future. So a stock down, unfortunately, for him for club and country. But with that all that out of the way, let's get into the fun stuff, which is the players to watch for this past week. And well, actually, I kind of lied, because there's an aspect of this, the Academy Player of the Week, that I'll start with, because again, it is from this past week, not one to look forward to. And I'm going to cheat here again, kind of break my own rules. I think this is going to kind of become a theme of the Stock Watch. The rules are very loose, but I'm going to actually pick 2 players, because one of them is going to be from the USA U17s that just played at the Václav Jezek tournament in Czechia. We made a whole video breaking down that tournament, so go watch that if you haven't. It was a very good video breaking down the performance of all 3 games, the rosters, some key players, and I'm going to pick the player who I think was the best in that tournament, had 2 goals and an assist in the second game against the host Czechia. It's going to be Mathieu Albert, and the reason I'm actually picking 2 players is because I picked Mathieu Albert as the Academy Player of the Week in the last Stock Watch, the inaugural Academy Player of the Week. He repeats, so congrats to him. If you want a more detailed look at how he did in the tournament, go watch that video, like I said. But I'm also going to pick a player from LAFC, despite the fact that I'm not a biggest fan of the club as a Union fan. I'm going to pick Adrian Wibowo. Sorry, I butchered his last name a little bit there, but a 2006 born winger slash, I think he can play striker as well, but mainly a winger. I'm picking him as Academy Player of the Week, or I guess co-Academy Player of the Week, because he just signed his homegrown deal with LAFC's first team, so huge congratulations to him on that. And he capped it off with a goal for LAFC's second team this past weekend. So all around, a great week for Adrian Wibowo, and hopefully he can have a role with the first team next season. I mean, he's now signed to a first team deal. He's been very good in MLS Next Pro this season, and I mean, the time will tell. I think he's done enough to deserve that deal, and it's nice to see him sticking around professionally instead of going to college. But we're just going to have to see what the future holds for Wibowo. But a very exciting prospect coming out of the LAFC Academy. Now on to the players to watch. And for the mainstream pick, again, it's going to be kind of cheating a little bit. I'm going to pick a game. It's going to be PSV versus Juventus, because, of course, we know for Juventus, we have Tim Weah and Weston McKennie. Since it's been weak, neither of them played. Weah came off the bench, but McKennie didn't play in Juve's game this past week. Maybe McKennie gets more minutes. Maybe he even gets a start. I doubt that, but maybe Weah gets a start, moves back into the lineup, because he did start his only game of the season before, of course, coming off with an injury at halftime, the first game, and scoring a beautiful goal in that one as well. So maybe he takes his starting spot back. It has to be said, the player who started over him in this past game, Nico Gonzalez, was very poor. So I think the odds of Weah maybe getting back into the starting lineup for this Champions League game are high. And then, of course, from a PSV perspective, we have Malik Tillman will start. Richie Ledesma, it actually looks like, will start at right back, which is a key development, because they did sign Rick Karsdorp in the window to eventually replace Ledesma, but he's still not ready for action. So Ledesma looks like will be given a huge chance against a marquee opponent in the Champions League. Very excited to see how he does there at right back. And then, of course, we have Ricardo Pepi, who will come off the bench, get a couple of minutes, hopefully, probably 10 or 15 at the end of the game, hopefully come up with a big goal or an assist off the bench. And then for my sleeper pick, I'm going to also pick 2 players, but they're from the same team. It's going to be Gaga Slonina and Donovan Pines from Barnsley, and I'm picking them because, well, on Tuesday, right after, I guess, the PSV versus Juventus game is done, we have Barnsley taking on Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. Huge marquee game at Old Trafford for Gaga Slonina and Donovan Pines, who play, of course, in League One with Barnsley. Their league is so low profile that they didn't even stop for the international break. That's part of the reason Slonina didn't get called up, for those wondering. And this is a huge chance for them to really announce themselves, especially Slonina on loan at Chelsea. I know that Chelsea's going to be watching this game with interest. If he impresses, and hopefully he does, maybe he'll get back on their radar. Maybe he has a future there. But I think mainly this is just the highest level opposition they're going to face all year by a long shot. It's a huge opportunity for both of them. I'm sure Pochettino will be watching the game as well. So who knows? Maybe if they both have a good performance, they get in the USMNT radar. I think at the very least, Slonina is worthy of it, and we do have a center back problem. So maybe Donovan Pines gets a call in for the October camp. You never know. But that's going to do it for today's Stock Watch. As always, if you want a change to the format, we're still adjusting. We're still very flexible. Sometimes this will be both of us. Sometimes it'll only be one of us. So if there's any changes to the format you want to see, please comment it down below, as well as, of course, your thoughts on my picks, your picks for the players whose stock went up and whose stock went down from this past week. There was a lot of the ones who, of course, I didn't pick because I only picked 3 each. For 3 stocked up, 3 stocked down this week because, of course, 5 was too much. So if there's any players I missed, please comment down below. I'm happy to, of course, reply to everyone in the comments. We love interacting with you guys. But that's going to be it. Until next time, have a great one, and we'll see you in the next video.